with the exception of Director Freeman and Director Hedges.
Yep, and everybody's here for the Parks Board except for Director Bernard.
Okay, cool.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum as well. Okay.
Oh, wait, so the meeting is being recorded.
The meeting is
audio
being
and
recorded.
visual.
On live stream YouTube.
Oof.
Is that so?
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. Do you want us to continue or do you want me to get started? Okay. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for everyone for coming. We really appreciate everyone coming out. Obviously, Deltopia and festivals in Isla Vista are a topic of supreme importance to a lot of people, and so it's really helpful to get the input of everybody. So the Ivy Rec and Park District and the IVCSD are government agencies servicing Isla Vista, both on the Rec and Park side with the Parks and Recreation, and the Community Services District has a number of local government powers, including operation of community facilities, law enforcement, contracts, and others that too many to name. But I wanted to give a little bit of background just as the president of the CSD to talk a little bit about what sort of our vision is for Deltopia and for festivals in Isla Vista. When I first got involved in local government and making a difference in our community, the first thing that I really organized around was there was a proposal from the former leadership of the sheriff's office to lower the nighttime noise ordinance from midnight on the weekends to 10 p.m. on the weekends. And so really what has animated me and continues to animate me is the idea that I don't think that we can ticket and arrest our way to a safer community. We need to build a safer community by having solutions that are restorative and that everyone can get behind, so that we have good relations between our public safety professionals and the community. That's incredibly important to me. And so, a little bit of history about Deltopia. Following the riot in 2014, there was a lot of community discussion about what the future of the event was going to be. There was a proposal put forward by students to have an organized event during the same day as Deltopia, with the hope that it would both make the event safer, would keep out out-of-towners that had caused so much of the violence that had been seen during the riot, and would be something that was still fun. Right now, with the way that Deltopia is, it's kind of this disorganized thing that just happens. No one really takes ownership of it. And so public agencies like the county and the university sort of just respond to it. And doing that wastes a lot of public resources, and it also creates this police state atmosphere that we've been told time and time again the community is just not behind. So the goal was, with an organized event, that we would be able to have more community input and community control over how the security plan would go, and create an event that was fun and entertaining that everyone would love to enjoy. So we've worked with the folks at Lucidity to put together this proposal. I want to thank them for all their hard work and dedication. They're a local music festival event company that has been operating for 10 years in the county and is very deeply committed to putting on a good show in our county and also reinvesting and giving back to our community. So we're going to give them a little bit of an opportunity to describe sort of what the proposal is about. I think everyone's got a copy of it. But lastly, I just want to leave everyone with a couple of statistics from the past Deltopia. There were 38 arrests, 93 tickets, a cliff fall, and a violent assault that left someone in the hospital. So these are the kinds of things that we're trying to remedy by creating an alternative that draws people away from the main area of Del Playa towards the downtown corridor. We don't think that everyone is going to, ditch the party scene on DP for the parks. However, we think that by drawing some of the pressure out of that area, that it'll make the event a lot safer and people will still be able to have a really good time. So thank you again, everyone, so much for coming. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Lucy. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just one quick thing. So this is, what's up? Oh, yeah. I'm Carlos. I'm the chair of the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District. This is Spencer. He's the chair, or the president. is the wording? Yeah, of the CSD. Yeah, I don't have as many remarks, and I think this is the part where we start to talk to the the community. We listen to the community, and Lucidity explains. I just wanted to say, having been part of a few of these conversations, this is an ambitious plan, which I think is good. I think it can do a lot of good, but I think that we don't need to be in the mindset of necessarily this all happens or none of it happens, or we completely change Deltopia in 1 year, or we don't at all. I found the discussions of kind of what can we do in a year and then build on that to be a little bit more productive. So if we just kind of have it as our headspace going in. But other than that, I think we can.
Absolutely. Thank you,
present you a
Carlos.
great event.
So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ron with Lucidity.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ron Glover. I'm one of the directors of Lucidity, and I've been with Lucidity from the beginning. The people you see up here are all owners of Lucidity. They're founders and directors as well. I want to preference this evening with saying that we are not vested in doing this if people don't want it. It's not our intention to come in and do something. Lucidity is going to do something that's going to save Deltopia. We were asked to come, and we thought about it, decided that we'd give it a shot. For 10 years, we've been honing our skills at harm reduction, and we've done a really good job at it. Again, I would like to say that it is an ambitious thing that we're trying to do, or that we've been asked to try and do, and doesn't all have to happen in 1 year. We may find out, if we do go ahead with this, find out that we were way out of our league. We don't have a magic wand, but we know that we've been successful at what we do. With that, we're here to fill any questions that you might have, and kind of ease any kind of concerns you might have.
Maybe it'd be helpful if you give sort of an overview of the presentation for folks who haven't seen it before yet, or the proposal.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jonah Gabriel Haas, and I am a co-founder of Lucidity Festival and our marketing manager. So the event that we've conceived of, as you see it in the proposal, would be a 2-stage event. One stage in Anascoyo Park, and then the other stage in the Forward Park. I believe that's People's Park. And so one of the stages would be a live music stage, and the other stage would be electronic music. We're also conceptualizing a beer garden that allows for people who are 21 to enjoy alcoholic beverages, a space for activities and games, and a really key component to our proposal is activating the Guardian team, which is an event-specific safety, security, and harm reduction outfit that grew out of Lucidity, but then has gone on to provide security and harm reduction services to probably about 12 other events, including Dirty Bird Campout, Northern Nights, Stoke the World, Lucidity Festival, Serenity Gathering. We've been down to Envision in Costa Rica, so even out of the country. And the Guardian team component of the proposal really seeks to alleviate some of the dynamics that Spencer was talking into of the police state feeling that Deltopia has experienced. And the Guardian team, harm reductionists, would serve as a sort of buffer between students and law enforcement, so that the vast majority of things, whether they be medical or sort of conflicts, can be de-escalated, mediated, and taken care of before escalating to law enforcement. And so that's a big piece of the proposal, and you can read about it in there. Another piece is our community outreach efforts. This proposal is really interesting because unlike the festival that we produce, where we sell tickets to it and we're trying to market it to get a bunch of people to show up, this event is going to be free for the community, and yet we don't want it to be so awesome that people from out of town come, but we do want it to be enjoyable enough that people come off of Del Playa to enjoy the event that we produce in the park. So it's sort of riding that razor's edge, and you'll notice in the, or I actually don't think you have the budget, but our talent budget is actually very small, and the reason for that is that we intend to bring in local acts, local DJs, local bands, hopefully many of which are students from UCSB, to provide an atmosphere that's really community driven, by and for the community. And then spend a little bit on some acts that are great in terms of delivering a awesome musical experience, but not necessarily the big names that are going to draw people from out of town. And so the other thing that I'll speak into is sort of the idea that the objectives of this proposal, which were conceived of by the Community Service District, and we're coming in to try to help implement these objectives, is really around public safety. You know, we're going to be producing a great party, but we're also going to be easing the pressure off of the unsafe conditions that are on Del Playa during Deltopia. And so I think that in order to fulfill on those objectives, we need to see an event that is really embraced by the community, and we want to build this with the community. It's like Ron was saying, we're not interested in stepping in and building a Lucidity Presents and having people come to the party that we imagine that Isla Vista wants. No, we want to sit in contexts like this and hear what the community wants and bring people who are interested in event production into the fold to produce the event that Isla Vista would like to see as a legacy project. You know, who knows how long Deltopia in its current configuration is going to be able to exist. But if it's sort of a project that we all hold hands and we have a good rapport and relationship and communication with law enforcement and with university, and we can build something that's safe for everybody, but still maintains the ability for everybody to have the good time that they want to have on this springtime event, I think that it can be successful for long term. And so that's really the point that I want to make, is that it might not all happen in 1 year in terms of all of the objectives that are trying to be fulfilled. But if we think about a slow transformation of the values that are at the foundation of what we want to produce an event around, which is really community, celebration of spring, then I think we might be able to be successful if we look at that sort of long game. So that's what I have to say, and I'm excited to hear your questions and concerns.
So with that, I figure we can just sort of open it up for questions that anyone has. I'm not sure if there's any other discussion prompts that we want to get at, but we want to make this brief. Go ahead.
Have you guys done any other collaborations with other municipalities in the area or any government agencies?
We work very closely with the county law enforcement, with
In
the.
regards to like event management, sorry.
Mhm. Well, yeah, in the production of our springtime festival, we work very closely with County Board of Supervisors and Parks Department, county parks, and law enforcement. And then we also, outside of Lucidity Festival, we also produce events or support in the production of other people's events around the calendar, like Solstice, Earth Day, Lemon Festival. So we're in the community in that way as well.
I can piggyback on that a little bit. Since we began, our relationship with the county parks, has increased a great amount. Every year it gets better and better. Our relationship with and their trust in us to be able to put together a safe environment and activity has just amazed me how much feel like a partnership with county parks instead of, somebody who's just renting their space. And same way with the sheriffs. Sheriffs in San Ynez have endorsed us highly when actually have gotten letters of recommendation about how they feel about what we do.
Thanks, Ron.
And I'm sorry, I haven't heard, how does law enforcement in Isla Vista, what is their feeling about having this event?
You might ask him.
Not sure if Dan is here representing law enforcement, but
Folks, I'm Dan Color with the Sheriff's Office. I actually was told to come to this meeting, just kidding. I'm working this evening, and I know a lot of you in this forum here. I've been in Isla Vista for about the past 6 years. I've been in the Sheriff's Department for 18 years. It's a great community to work. I really enjoy being out here, which is why I stay in this community. Wanted to say, Ron, yes, we do endorse what you do up there, and maybe not everybody understands what harm reduction sounds like, so maybe you can kind of hit on some of those points. But what it sounds like, and correct me if I'm a little bit wrong, but we provide more of a supporting role to you folks when we're up there at the Lucidity Festival. You kind of mentioned handling things at the lowest level, de-escalating, mediating before we get to law enforcement, which in essence is what law enforcement does at the same time. We de-escalate, we mediate, we handle things at the lowest level until they can't be handled at that level, which is unfortunate. So we do endorse what you do up there. I would imagine that it's going to be probably very similar type relationship that we would have with you folks here in Isla Vista. So it just kind of remains to be seen. It sounds like a really good thing. You talked about that razor's edge of not getting too many people in the community, the outsiders. Being here in and around this community for as long as I have, I can really tell you it is the outsiders that come in here and cause the problems that we see. So hopefully it does just remain a very local event and a very safe event and a very fun event. My question for you would be, or first to the people who want to organize this, is this kind of more of a daytime or morphing into an evening festival or multi-day? What are you thinking?
I'm going to pass it over to Alan or Meta. He can speak on the guardians and the harm reduction and answer your question as well.
Hi.
Do you want me to come up there? I don't There's a seat for you up there.
Hi, I'm Metatron, one of the co-founders of Lucidity and an owner of the Guardian team, which is the company that Jonah had talked about that has formed out of Lucidity. We've created a hybrid model of security that focuses on de-escalation and harm reduction. And the reason we've done that is because we've worked with quite a few different security companies, and they don't usually have the focus that we want within our community. So what we've done is created a hybrid model, and now we kind of rent that out to other agencies as well and other events. And so to answer your question about daytime, nighttime, we're here with the idea of wanting to work with the current plan of how things have been. And so we're looking to operate during the daytime hours so that we can still work with UCSD and funnel things over to their nighttime concert. But as far as the Guardian team goes, I think once we get approval and know that we're moving forward with something, then as we work closer with law enforcement, we'll get a feel for what the overall plan together would be. And if we're wanted to kind of remain longer past our event on that day and work as that buffer, I think we'd be open to that.
One thing I want to add when he was saying about the focus of security, like more conventional security companies, and the focus of this Guardian team is that in terms of the training that we provide to the people, or that he provides, and that those teams are working with, a lot of security companies have security guards who are trained for, more, no, just more more conventional contexts of, like, I don't just say a mall or a store, but it's, there's less of that training of, like, how to deal with these kinds of situations that you find when you have 4,000 people between 17 and 45 years old and beyond, but there's still a lot of people in that age range. And we have about 4,500, and there's a lot going on, and some people experience or want to experience the edge of what they can experience. And so this guarding team is trained on how to handle these kinds of situations when people are not in their right mind, one could say, or they're or who are altered in some way, and it could be from so many different things. It could be dehydration. And so the what's unique about this guardian team is the training they have on how to approach and interact and be present with individuals who are oftentimes going through a really hard and challenging time, and they don't know really what's going on or how to deal with it, and they have somebody who's there, really an ally. Like, even though, like you said, the police or the legal authorities have that intention of in training of de-escalating, sometimes just seeing somebody in a uniform can throw somebody on a tailspin. And so having that friendly presence who's there, who really knows how to help them and is really on their side, can make a whole world of difference for somebody and for everybody around them. And so that's part of the idea of, introducing that kind of support for when there's lots of chaos and wildness, which is a beautiful thing.
I'll piggyback on your comments there, and you make a really good point that as far as the level of training goes, you do have folks that are specifically trained to deal with people that are having crisis for various reasons. Whatever those reasons may be. There may be some mind-altering drugs, there may be some dehydration going on, there may be some other issues that are happening. Sometimes just the fact that we are showing up in a uniform creates a different dynamic which we don't intend to occur. All of the deputies, all of our dispatch personnel, all of our jail personnel, all of our civilian personnel go through a basic crisis intervention training program. Most of the supervisors, the training officers, and so forth go through a week-long and even longer crisis intervention training program. So it really is, what we're doing these days is focused on de-escalation and dealing with folks in crisis. But when you throw a uniform on somebody, it just it throws them a curveball a lot of times. Our crisis intervention team, which we will be deploying 3 more members of that team very soon, they don't wear the standard uniform.
Yes.
They wear a polo shirt, and they go with one of the people from mental health services. So it's great. It's a great response. And I think a lot of you know James McCarroll, and he's been on that team since the beginning. So he does a fantastic job in that realm. So maybe we can collaborate with James a little bit and kind of figure out what we can do, how we can best mesh with the Lucidity Festival, or whatever it's going to be called in Isla Vista, to try to figure out the best way to manage this event safely.
Want to reopen the floor for questions in the back.
So is de-escalation training a subset of crisis intervention training? Is de-escalation, has it kind of gelled into a recognized, standardized curriculum, or is it still kind of new and there's a lot of different?
It's not necessarily new. It's something we've been doing for a long time. It's just, that's a different phrase we're using. We used to call it verbal judo. Being able to just basically talk somebody into cooperating with you. Now it really is about getting buy-in from somebody and working with them as a team. When I'm out there in the field and if somebody's having a bad day, I'll let them know that we're in this together, we're going to get through this together. And that really is where the de-escalation comes in, where we don't have to take it to any level. If somebody's having a really bad day, and we see it out here a lot, people are experimenting with drugs and that kind of thing. And a lot of times they're not acting as they normally would. Sometimes it's very irrational, and sometimes it's just a matter of us bringing it down, using our voice, using our body language, kind of standing off a little bit, and making them feel comfortable. And that's where the whole de-escalation comes in. It is a state standard. It is something that POST, which is the governing body that dictates how we get trained, wants us to do, thinks that we should be doing, and is incredibly important. with regard to law enforcement in general, this is just kind of a general statement. California has the highest level of training in the country. We are a little bit different than most of the other states. Not that they're any worse, it's just that our standards for training are that much higher. So the California model, I think, is the best model to follow. Nevada and some of the other western states follow suit with us and are very close to what we do. But when we see things happening and occurring that are in the public eye and are causing quite a stir in the world news, a lot of those things happen outside of California. But because we're law enforcement, there's a blanket kind of, that's how law enforcement does business. So just kind of giving you a heads up that that's how law enforcement works in California. Joan, did you have a question?
Just a couple of things. First of all, I think the sooner we get away from Deltopia and Deltopia inspired and rebrand it, the less I would be so nervous about this. The second thing really though is a question, and that is more about families in the broader community. I did go recently to the Lemon Festival, and there was stuff that all different ages, I mean pie eating contests and fashion shows and old vintage stuff, and I mean, it was just silly, but it was fun. I remember when we had a spring event and we did a New Orleans jazz parade around the community, and that was a blast, and everybody came, young and old, and it really it felt like the community was experiencing something joyous in the springtime together. So I think it's important that we think about activities that could be shared by not just UCSB students, but the community who lives here, including families and children.
Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Will the crisis people that are not in uniform, will there be a name tape or badge number or something that they can be identified?
With regard to the Lucidity folks?
Well, from the county or wherever.
Okay.
Is this going to be a
county law
standard thing?
enforcement always has some sort of identifying insignia?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
What do you mean?
You guys don't have, often you don't, yes, I know.
I'm sorry, I'm not really following
Yeah,
you.
well, we can talk about it later, but
That's fine.
we need to be able to rely on these people to be identified.
Well,
Okay.
Not just that I'm so-and-so, or I'm doing this. It's gonna have to be a person.
So I want to prompt over to Lucidity. Do you guys have sort of numbers or identifiers?
Yeah, we have a uniform. So
Okay.
the person would give you their name. They can pull out their guard card if that's the
It would be their identification.
actual identifier. But for state of California, event security needs it to say security on the back, and then there's an emblem on the front and the side shoulders.
But no name, no personal.
No
identification.
personal name, no.
Okay.
But in terms of crisis intervention, that would be the Guardian team, and they wear a purple shirt. And so that is, the reasoning behind that is sort of goes in line with the conversation around oftentimes when you have a uniform show up, it can escalate the situation just simply by the uniform. And the purple shirt, we notice, is more of a calming effect. And so, just wanted to mention that.
There's no individual identification visible on that person.
Not on their shirt, no.
Nothing that someone watching the situation can identify.
I wanted to say something, and then he can speak to the family part. My name is Nikki. I currently run the fabrication and installation department. So if this were to move forward, I'd be the person coordinating materials and equipment and build crews, that type of thing. And so I'm always excited when those things happen. But what I'm hearing a little bit is, we want the words, I wrote them down. We want to draw people away, and we want to, there's a little bit of we don't want, Deltopia is big and scary and problematic, and what can we do so it doesn't really exist anymore? And I think, kids or, college students, adults, and people of all ages, the desire to celebrate and have fun and be outside of the bounds of authority and restriction is a beautiful impulse and a beautiful desire. And the way I see it, I don't think of, Deltopia is an awesome thing for a lot of awesome people. how can we make it awesome and not dangerous and not scary and not very costly to the authorities, which are part of the world we live in. And so I think part of this possibility of collaboration is that. How can we, it's like, well, rather than trying to have this party go away, that's so problematic, let's have another party at the same time and have two parties happening or multiple parties where we can support each other in learning on how to create that experience where so many people, local people, right? We don't want to make it too like a big thing that becomes something else. But I think just wanting to come back to that idea of like, let's celebrate this possibility of collaboration while also celebrating what Deltopia is and is about, because there's great things about it too. So just wanted to add that. And then this is Metatron, who introduced himself earlier, and he can speak to including families and children and activities around that, because it's a big part of what we do at Lucidity as well.
Right. Last year, Lucidity won the FestX Award, which is an international festival conference for the best family event. And so, what's that?
Family friendly.
Yeah, best family friendly event. And I feel like I'm speaking to you back there, Christian. I feel like ultimately we would love to have an event that is multi-generational and has appeal for everyone in the community to come to. I also understand what Deltopia currently is, and I feel like in this first iteration of creating something new, there's going to be a lot of draw from that party community. And personally, as a father of 3 young children, 5, 3, and 2, I don't know that I would bring them to this one. And that's just because of, it's like that, the razor's edge again. It's wanting to create something that has at least more appeal than just to students. So in my assessment of that, it would be still some of that age range from 25 to 45, and maybe focus the events and the games on the students and residents within that, the drinking age. And I wouldn't say that means to exclude things that children could be involved in, but I feel like during this first iteration, it's just a little, like I'd want to see myself, at least coming from the safety, security side of things, what that's going to be like before I would really welcome my children or other residents' children. But it would definitely be something that I would love to see it move into.
Thank you for that. I saw Christian had a hand, and then I'll go to Sue.
Yeah. So I just was wondering if y'all can comment on the Guardians' experience in IV. I believe they had a short contract with the co-op, maybe what they did there, and just other events that they've done.
Yeah, we were working at the food co-op until just before Burning Man, and with the intention of starting back up in September. We've been really busy, so we just haven't had that conversation to be back over there. It was great. We were kind of augmenting their staff already, and just also being another resource for mediation or information for students in the community. One of the things we were talking about with Melissa was, we had been meeting with Justin, is it, from Foot Patrol? And looking at ways in which to work with the Foot Patrol and law enforcement in support of each other, and kind of moving outside of the food co-op. That part never happened yet, but that's kind of the direction that we're looking at moving. As far as other events, there's been a few private events, like Fishbone has hired us out. We have On the 2nd with EOS. We're hired to go to EOS on the 2nd for an overnight outside party that they're having. And so, yeah, we're seeing, now that we just established ourselves as an LLC in December. And so this year, we saw a large reach out for us that we didn't anticipate. And we ended up providing the safety and security for quite a few events that were in the 8,000 person capacity range. So
Disclosure Fest, free event in
yeah,
LA.
Disclosure was a free event in LA, and Northern Nights and Dirty Bird were both 8,000 person events. So we really stretched our boundaries and got to meet new communities, and it was a good experience.
I want to clarify, just so you don't sell yourself short, that although you only just established yourself as an LLC, you've been doing this at Lucidity for many
About
years.
5 years,
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go over to Sue.
Since Deltopia is named after Del Plata, what's the thought about rebranding, as Joan said, and giving this a whole different name to move it into?
Well,
have
we're
that
all
be
for that.
considered?
I'll answer that question. Coming into this, we thought that was going to be an imperative of the project in terms of adjusting the sets of connotations, associations, and ideas around the event, that to rebrand it would be an important component of this event. And I think that we still feel that way. However, the thing that I will mention is that we created a survey to receive community and student input. And we got about 260 responses on that survey. So it's a good representational slice. And on the question around rebranding, there was sort of overwhelming response that students don't want to see it rebranded. And so to rebrand it would be to not listen to that feedback. And I think it's still an open question over whether or not we decide to rebrand it or keep it simple, like Spring Festival, Isla Vista Spring Festival or something like that. So I do want to mention that there is an overwhelming response from students that they don't want to see it rebranded, and I think that it comes from an idea that this is going to change or take away their beloved Deltopia party, and that's not what we're trying to do. So that overwhelming negative response to rebranding may come from that place. I'm not quite sure. Maybe students can speak to it. Do you think maybe you might want to speak to sort of that sentiment?
Yeah, I'm Tony.
Hi, Tony.
So, yeah, I sort of started going to Deltopia. I can tell you the overwhelming majority of UCSB, even if you call something different, will keep calling it Deltopia. We won't care. They like it, and I loved it too when I went. And then I actually went to Lucidity for my first time, I think my second or third year here. And I felt immediately just it was a more safe and like mature and just overall way more mindful partying than everything that came to Deltopia. And I started just skipping Deltopia actually. But I think bringing that good part of like Lucidity and like the space, the mindfulness, and bringing that back into Deltopia and changing the nature is completely possible. I don't think you have to change the name and like waste resources trying to rebrand. I think we could just show people there's a way to go about things smarter, more mindfully.
Yeah, thank you.
I would also agree. I'm a resident and I live here with my son and my husband, so I would like to see more of this focus on a transformation of values like you were describing, rather than kind of this focus on rebranding. So the one thing that devastates me the most after partying, like it's great, I'm glad people are having a good time, but it's all of the trash that is all over the streets in our community. And for my son, when he's walking through, he's like, "Mommy, why is there trash all over the floor?" I'm like, well, that's a good question. So I would love to see some of the mindfulness that Lucidity offers brought to our community for sure.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm one of the co-founders and Metatron's wife. So we have 3 young children too, and so we feel that way of definitely wanting to leave a great example for the next generations. And so we've talked, about the different implementations of like Adopt a Block or different volunteering hours that can go to show our values, and also to say, hey, you want to have a really good time? So do we, and here's a better way to implement it. So we've definitely talked about that as being one of the concerns.
Hi, and I know I've talked to you guys all before. My name is Kiyomi. We work at AS Program Board, so we're a student programming board, and we do a similar kind of alternative programming that night called the warm-up. And I guess like when I had first heard the pitch, I know I'd shared the concern of like it seems like it's making Deltopia like more of a thing by having a festival, and like with the concern of trash, of cleanup, of also increased drug use for people who go to music festivals. And then also the idea that for the first year, even with the Guardians, there'd be an increased police presence. I guess I still have some like worry that it would make it a big thing. And I know we talked about before kind of like if it is something fun, enough fun that people come away from parties, then it will attract theoretically outsiders. And I know you guys have some, I don't know, things to kind of prevent that, but I guess I still am kind of worried about that. And just because we have a similar event at nighttime that is students only for access cards. For me, I guess just speaking from the board, it would be a conflict with our event and something I feel like we are kind of already doing or trying to help with the community. And I think in general, like, I guess I want to see like if CSD would be able to do something different just because we have something kind of like that already.
I'll go over to Ethan first.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your comments. Could you explain how it would be a conflict with your event?
So if anyone doesn't know, we have the warm-up and it's at nighttime and it's $5 for students. And it is on the Saturday, I think, of Deltopia. I don't know what day it's going to be this year, but it's usually been on Saturday, I think. And so if we have like a festival of music in the daytime, usually it's like the warm-up functions so that kids that go out to party in the daytime have somewhere safe to go at night. So when they're all like inebriated, they won't get too drunk where they can't come to the concert, so they'll stay slightly more sober, but then also it's like a safe place with, I don't know, just like people looking out for them and like, medical support and that kind of stuff. So I think if there's like a festival in the daytime, people would go to that and then party and then fall asleep and then probably wouldn't go to the nighttime festival, which is a conflict just from the side of program board. So I know that those of you who aren't on program board, which is everyone here, would maybe have some other reasons. But I think it's just because it seems like we have that, like we are kind of like, we're kind of concerned hearing about it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And
I mean, from my perspective, because I've thought about that a lot, I think that when looking to fix this issue with Deltopia, we can't just look at it as a either or, as a winner or loser, but really an all of the above solution. I think that if we do have our event during the day, we're accomplishing the same thing. We still encourage people to go to your event at night, but I think that we have to work together on that. And I think it would also be really important that we get some support from the student body with funding too. We're supportive of your event. I think it's great. You've done an amazing job over the past several years bringing people off the streets at night, but what we're seeing right now, it's not going far enough. So I think that's really our opportunity here with this to augment the efforts that are going on right now.
I have a quick question for you, okay? So warm-up goes from what time to what time?
It's usually like, I think it's 7 to midnight around.
And then, but that's different than the concert, right? Or is that the
That's
concert?
the concert.
That
Yeah,
is
so
the
it's the
concert.
concert's
So
called
that's the
warm-up.
whole concert, okay. Wasn't there another event also that was on campus that was different than the?
1 year, but is that Friday? It used to be the roller skating.
That is
Okay.
the rec center. So it's like
Okay.
a lot of different campus ones I think do like a combined effort. So like for Halloween we have the Delirium concert and then the rec center had Halloween and there's like lots of other events.
Well,
we
I
just
do-
do the concert.
I do want to say that I feel, because I've been here since '82 and I've seen it all, that you folks doing the concert and having it specific for students has made a huge positive difference to what happens out here, both for Deltopia and for Halloween. So whatever happens here, let's make sure we don't hurt that, because that's really, because I see it as several fold. One, if you're going to have a party, if you want to go to the concert, then you're not going to have a party where you have friends from out of town, because your friends from out of town can't go to the concert with you. And I think that right there was the biggest piece of the puzzle, was just having something going on where people are like, you know what, I'm not going to have all my buddies come from out of town because they're not going to be able to do stuff with us later. So let's just, I don't know what the answer is, but let's just be really careful not to hurt it, because I think it really has been the best thing that's slowed down people from coming out of town. And my biggest concern, and I'm on the Parks Board, and my biggest concern is always, how do we keep other folks from coming into town? I mean, we've got our hands full with the people that are here, and I'm just not sure. I know ideas were tossed around at the beginning, but parking, shutting down, access, all those things logistically are really challenging, and I don't know what we can do to slow it down. So everyone just keep that in the back of their mind, because I don't want to support anything at all that brings more folks in when we, again, have our hands full with who's here.
I'm going to go over to Carlos because he's there, and Christy.
Yeah, I had a couple of things. Yeah, so I went to, I'm Carlos, I've been living in IB, I'm the chair of the Parks Board. I went to UCSB during the year, for 2 years before the riots and for 2 years after the riots, so I kind of got to see the difference between having it and not. And you did definitely made a big difference to my Deltopia experience, and to how the whole town was treated generally, so I think it's definitely been a really good thing. I do think though, I feel like two things as far as the concern about how it will impact the warm-up. I think for one, I think that this event that we're talking about now is important because the warm-up is exclusively UCSB students and doesn't take into account a lot of SBCC students, or, I don't know, like I'm 26, I like to get out there. So there are like other bodies of people, but also, I mean, like, I don't want to say like it's not like a concern. I think it's definitely something that, like, if you all find at this like upcoming warm up that numbers were significantly down, like I think it's something we definitely want to talk about going forward. However, I don't know that this first year the event is going to be so massive that we are going to be drawing in a ton of other people, or that it might like radically alter how many people attend the event. I think that's what the other thing about people coming in from out of town is, it kind of feels to me like people are definitely already coming in from out of town. So I don't think this event is going to be the thing that's drawing any more people than are already coming in from out of town than Deltopia already brings. But I do feel that concern.
Just a direct comment to that,
Yeah.
I think there is like a lot of out of towners for Deltopia. I think that is the one where it's like I see the most people that come.
Yeah, I've seen like
and
buses.
I think, but there's a big thing with like the student thing at nighttime having that restriction, but then also in the daytime, it's hard because to get into parties, you have to know somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only reason the festival is like, here is now the thing that all the out of towners can go do. Now it's like, this is open, there's a beer garden, there's like that kind of stuff. So I think that is like kind of where I see that concern.
And if I can jump in here, not to put law enforcement on the spot, but I will say that I think from talking with you and your leadership, it seems like one of the biggest public safety problems is folks who are here from out of town and don't have anywhere to go because they don't know anyone, they don't know how to get into a party. I think that was the situation with the young man from Oregon who assaulted someone and put them in the hospital on Delphi last year.
Yeah, and that's typically what we see is that a lot of folks that come from out of town, they hear that this is a great party to attend, but then a lot of times they can't get in or they just don't know where to go, so they're just wandering around aimlessly. Sometimes they end up in a fight, and that's what happened with that gentleman from Oregon. And that is just an example of folks from the outside of the community coming in here and causing problems. There are people from within the community that cause a small amount of those problems, but by and large, like I said, it's typically the outsiders. So.
And if I can add one more thing, which is just that under the status quo, UC Santa Barbara has a $30,000 marketing event for Deltopia through their targeted ads towards other campuses, telling people, stay away from IV, it's gonna be no fun. And that has a adverse effect where people think, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. I wanna go to the crazy party. So that kind of goes back to, you know, one of the core reasons we're wanting to do this, which is that everyone is sort of in their silos right now, doing their own thing, responding to this spontaneous outburst of energy in the spring that is Deltopia. And I think that having everyone come together and try to solve the problem is going to get us a lot further than, you know, staying in our silos and doing our own thing. I know even just with talking with UCSB executive vice chancellors, they're open to taking that marketing budget that they have for, you know, trying to keep people out and repurposing that to something else that's more productive.
Can I say a quick response? Just a quick response. I mean, we've been wanting to enlist the program board in what we're doing, and it has been really important for us to stop our event well before the nighttime event is happening, so that there is not that interference that you're concerned with.
And additionally, you know, when we came to speak with the programs board last week or 2 weeks ago, you know, I laid right on the table that ideally, in a perfect world, we build this event together, right? And so it's like the warm-up and your headliner at the top of the poster, and then the community, open to the community event at the bottom of the poster, and it's all conceptualized as one event. And I understand that you're not able to bill in that way because of legal reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah, and just like the student fee versus community fees aspect.
Right. So, but that's on your side. On our side, there's nothing preventing, at least I believe, there would be nothing preventing us from including the warm-up as the thing to do at night in every communication that went out about this event, so that it was an additional promotional tool for your event. You know, in any sort of schedule, it could be included in a schedule. And so just speaking to your concern that the daytime event might reduce numbers to your nighttime event, I think there are ways to mitigate that by collaborating rather than seeing each other as competitive.
Yeah, and I don't mean to like have the competitive just like out of my own personal heart, but it is, I think, like, I don't think there would be any way, even like on your end, just because it is such a big difference between we use student fees for this programming on, and I think having it on the same bill with one open to the community when ours is like very much the opposite would be like pretty problematic in itself, just because I think like people come to the warm-up thinking, people already come to the warm-up thinking that they can get in without like a school ID, and so like I don't think there'd be any way we could bill on the same, but yeah, just to clarify for those who don't know about that whole thing.
And okay, and then I guess my final piece is just a question for you is, you cited that you thought that people would party really hard and then go to sleep and not come to your event. If we did not produce an alternative event, isn't that still a concern that people are going to party too hard at Deltopia and not come to your event?
So that's definitely true, but I think it's more of like, I think people are gonna party during Deltopia either way without any kind of like outside thing. So it's more about like, what can you do in addition? But I don't think people would go to two music things back to back. But that's just from like, especially if there's like the Deltopia parties. But
so during our survey, one of the comments that we had when you mentioned, you know, additional substance usage was college students are looking for a safe way to do that. They're wanting to know, how do I party and make it okay and make sure I don't get harmed or somebody doesn't get stolen from or some accident doesn't happen to me. And so what we're trying to implement is that safeguard in between there, saying we know that you're going to do this, and so we'd like to be there to help and support. What was also asked for was bathrooms and water. So if we help support with bathrooms and water, then there's a chance that people are going to go to your event and be
less inebriated, because we're gonna help in the beforehand of that. So I guess from our perspective, we're looking at it as a compliment too, of saying this really works, and we know that people are going to come to this and they're going to do their own thing. So why not help with the safeguard and the cushion to say, hey, there's a little bit softer and better way to do this. We want to make sure you're not getting ticketed. We want to make sure you're not falling off of a cliff. We want to make sure you're not having any of the other things that weren't cited that are actually happening out there and that people are talking about later. We just want to be there to be able to do similar to what we do at our event in the sense of harm reduction and have hundreds of children there. So.
Okay, so I've seen a number of hands, so I'm just going to go this way, over here, and back, and back.
Going off some of the earlier comments made about like the event drawing outsiders and there being outsiders coming and outsiders starting fights, I think a lot of the understated part of that is I've seen a lot of people try to walk into a party and the guy's like, who the hell you are, I think, going in the house, and like hit him in the face. I've seen, like, I don't even usually go to parties in IV. I went out to one a few weeks ago because my friend was DJing and I saw like 4 fights, and it was just all people probably from the community. It still happens. I think this event, even if it does draw outsiders, to some extent, people are already going to be coming down for Deltopia. It will still help change the culture overall towards a less violent and like aggressive mindset, which I think is like overall still a net positive.
If I'm underage and I don't like electronic music, what does this offer me?
There will also be a stage for live music as well.
And then there's also in the plan a games and activities component. Yet to be determined. I think that if we get a green light on this, then those would be co-created with the community. But yeah, I think that's a great question. What types of games and activities would bring you out?
Also open mic, so comedy, lots of different things.
Oh yeah, open mic stage at Isla Vista Food Co-op.
We've talked about in some of those activities, because this is considered like a celebration to the rites of spring, and because sexual misconduct has been so prevalent in its current iteration of a lot of alcohol use. We've talked about ways in which to bring education around consent and having like kissing booths and things that are managed in a way that gain consent but still allow for exploration and, you know, spring shenanigans and things like that. So yeah, we're really open to hearing from students especially and residents how they want to celebrate spring.
Okay.
Still holding out for the the sofa derby.
Yeah. couch derby.
Yeah.
The 2014 Deltopia event was just a colossal mess. And probably there's a lot of new people here who aren't aware of the extent of that. It seems to me like it would be very useful if we could get a copy of the after-action report. I remember one of the right-hand commanders for Sheriff Brown said it would be available, but it just took forever to come out. So anyway, how could we get a copy of the after-action report for the 2014 Deltopia event?
Sure, you could submit a request to records, and they'd be happy to provide that to you.
I'm going to go to Parks and Campus.
Michael, what would we do with the report? Read it and get acquainted with the extent of horribleness as possible. And plan for it. I think it would be important that your Guardian team have it.
Yes.
And that the CSD board have it.
You can check that. Over here, and then you.
Me?
Yes.
Hi. First of all, I want to say to the Lucidity people, I have total trust in your putting on an event at the areas that you have picked. That's going to be fantastic. What I'm concerned about isn't what's happening at your event and how well you have it organized and the harm reduction and everything. I think that's going to work. Having been through many Deltopias now, and last year been exceedingly traumatic due to the injuries that I witnessed happening. Calls from my friends who work in the ER asking me what the heck's going on out there. It was so traumatic, and I think, you know, it's turned from the funnest event I've ever seen in my life, the first one with everybody out floating. I was like, oh my God, this is the most magical thing I've ever seen. But since then, it has just gone straight downhill. You know, it's been fun, sure, but so this is why we're trying to turn it around. But due to all the trauma that I have witnessed in the street, it seems so counterintuitive to create an event that's bringing more outsiders in. Like the UCSB event keeps it local, everything keeps it local. We have this event that's going to be great there. My concern is what happens on the streets, because the guardians and everybody, they aren't going to be there. So that's my concern. It's not with you guys, it's with what happens when people aren't drinking in the beer garden or various things. It's just, it's scary to me. And then the other thing, I've got a quick question. Who usually pays for the city festivals?
The ticket buyers.
The ticket buyers. So there will be no ticket buyers this time. So it's going to be around $200,000.
Well, the budget,
the 150.
The budget is in there is 184, but since then we've cut about 25,000 from it, so it's resting down around 159 right now.
And then this is really more for looking at it from dollars and cents perspective, not from a fund perspective or law enforcement, just strictly from dollars and cents, and this is kind of for the CSD. So if we look at this as, and it's a question, if we look at it as an evolution, so this one is the first one, and then it evolves as the years go on. So in 5 years, we're looking at spending almost $1 million on public safety from the taxpayers, because it's free. So, I guess my question is, if it doesn't work, have we actually increased the number of outsiders expecting to come into Deltopia? And then we decided it didn't work, so now we're not having it. I mean, I'm just trying, I'm like a worst case scenario right now, and I'm really sorry.
No, and I appreciate that. And you know, as a policymaker, that's my job too, is to think of worst case scenarios. So there are multiple components of what you raised. The first one I want to say is that this is a 100% experimental year for us. There's no long-term commitment being made to sort of go forward with this. What our board has done is looked at the status quo and seen a status quo that's bad and said, let's try and do something to try and change things around. The second thing is that as a taxpayer, we spend well over more than $1 million over 10 years on public safety resources that come into the community, just in terms of the salaries of deputies who are out there enforcing the law. I think last year the number that we got recently was a little under $150,000 on the sheriff's office side. Undoubtedly a similar price tag on UCPD's side. So our goal is that over time this becomes an event that is, you know, sort of a net gain in terms of we're not spending as much tax revenue on trying to sort of police what's going on and more about trying to organize what's going on. The third thing that you mentioned is the most important, which is making sure that we don't unduly and unwittingly draw in people from outside of the community. And I think that that's something that is really non-negotiable for me, and I think non-negotiable for our board. As Dan mentioned, and as has previously been mentioned, you know, it's the folks from out of town that are causing a lot of these problems. If you look at the arrest record, that's what you see. Same thing with other sorts of citations. And so what Lucidity has proposed to us is that their musical acts are not going to be on the same par as the sort of like nationwide stars that program board is able to afford, and it's going to be something that the talent budget is much smaller, and it won't be as much of a draw for people from outside unless they're like, I don't know, super music head and they happen to know this random like local band or local DJ. And what's really great, I think the company you work with is called Music is Love. Is that what it is? Where they're able to find folks that are like up and coming artists and get them for a really low price and still put on a show that's really good. So our goal really is that we sort of underwhelm people on the billing and overwhelm people when they're there so that they want to stay and they don't want to go to the rest of the parts of, IV. Some folks are not going to want to do it. They're just going to want to go and do the DP thing and, chug a plastic handle of vodka or whatever the kids are doing nowadays. I say that as someone who recently graduated and participated in Deltopia. But the point is that this is supposed to be additive to the day, not subtractive when it comes to the value. What it's not supposed to be additive of is people. And so we've thought about various strategies about how to mitigate that, including sort of rebranding the name. We've talked about doing some sort of residents-only ticketing system where even though you don't have to pay money to get in, you still would have to have gotten sort of filled out a form on an app or something like that. So there are creative ways that we can do this that have the same effect. But I think in terms of the event itself, it's not going to be at the scale where it would draw people from outside.
Can I respond to what you said, your last thing you said? And, you have a lot of questions and rightfully so. And you ended up saying, well, what if this doesn't work?
What if it doesn't work?
Yeah. Well, my question would be, what if it does? What if it does? You can't find out, we won't know. I can't get from there to there unless I take a step. So this is, like I said in the beginning, we don't have a magic wand. We're just trying to help. And if this works, it works. And you couldn't ask for anything better. If it doesn't, we don't do it again. So that's how I would prefer to look at it. Instead of not trying and say, what if it doesn't work? What if it does?
Thank you for that, Ron. I'm going to go over to Gina in the back and then Kiyomi in the Carlos.
I have a question for the Lucidity Board, and this comes out of a real concern for outsiders. You guys are very popular, you have a global following. If this comes together and you sign on and you do this event, would you guys do this quietly and not advertise that this is like another Lucidity thing and really, I think it really is this thing of the outsiders, because you guys are super fun. People come from all over to seek you out, and if the outsiders component really is scary. I think it's scary for the permanent residents too.
Yeah, I think that absolutely, there's no intention to trumpet this event out widely, and there's no incentive to do that either, because it's a free event and it's going against the objectives that we're stepping in to help provide. So yes, we would do it quietly, and if there was a request for our name to not even be on it, we are open to that as well. I think that what we see ourselves as is a consulting production company that wants to support the Isla Vista community in solving some of their social and cultural issues.
Thank you.
I have Kiyomi and then Carlos, and then I'll go.
And this is more of a question for CSD and kind of bouncing off what you were saying. And I know it's like kind of I'm a similar kind of like negative Nancy from my mom and kind of worried about that stuff. And I agree that I think trying stuff is important and you won't know. But I do think her concern is from like it's it's like $159,000 try. So it is true that that is a loss, even if it doesn't work, and it's a concern, even with that kind of potential that you guys have. And I think for CSD, and I know that for program board, it's like funny me saying it because it's like we spend a lot of money on programming, but it's the only thing that we really can spend that stuff on. Can you justify spending that much on this event rather than medical tents, drug testing, water, or food that could help Deltopia in another way?
So great. The first thing I want to address is that we're not going to bear the entire price tag. We have other groups that we're going to go to in hopes of collaboration, because there are a lot of different stakeholders, whether they're public agencies or other nonprofits in the community, that have a stake in seeing Deltopia become a safer day. The second thing is that while it is a big price tag, I again draw the attention to the fact that we're already paying that money in just law enforcement fees. And so I feel like I, through this process, have come to realize something about people, which is that I think that it can be very difficult to get out of the frame of mind of seeing the world as it is now and bridging that gap to the way we want the world to be. And when it comes to something like this, that is like a big, I think, portion of it, because the amount of money that we would save over the long term is significant compared to what we're spending now, if you just look at it from a fiscal perspective.
Potentially, but
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
but we don't know for sure yet is the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, I pride myself as a public official on being someone who's willing to take risks. I will just say that, because you know what? If we just keep doing the same thing that we've done over and over again, then that's the definition of insanity, as someone once said.
I have a question regarding that. So currently, law enforcement spends 3 to 4 times that amount to police for that weekend, correct?
I don't know if it's 3 to 4 times. We've got numbers from the sheriff's office. We don't have the numbers from UCPD's side, but it's not just law enforcement. It's also fire and EMS that are responding to emergencies that happen. It's also UC Santa Barbara putting up the fencing and other things that they do. Their advertising budget. I mean, if taking stock of how much everyone is putting in to actually respond to this event would be an arduous task, but it would be a very high price tag and much higher than what we're.
Right. And we would also be bringing in medical. We'd be having most of what you mentioned would be coming with us. And ma'am, I don't know your name in the stretcher.
Sorry.
What was it?
Janice.
From my understanding, the Guardian team, while we would be focused and our event would be happening in the loop, we would be patrolling and going down Deltopia and the surrounding streets and taking a stock of what's happening and making sure that people are safe. Yeah.
Okay. I think I had Carlos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just had 2 things, and this might come off as a little flowers and daisies at times, but I kind of want to just present kind of a different mindset. So Deltopia is very much an event in motion. What it is exactly in any given year changes from year to year. It was Flowtopia initially, and then it was this huge big Deltopia, and then it kind of tamped down a little bit. Now it seems like it's ramping up, and like Janet was saying, the violence of it has ramped up a little bit. It's starting to become an event that's more detrimental than it was in the past. So I think sometimes when we talk about the risk of trying something like this, at least it kind of appears to me that we're getting ourselves in the mindset that Deltopia as we have it is this stable, manageable event, where in very many ways it's not. So I feel like we're kind of in 2 realities where we either try something like this, even if it is at significant financial cost, or we watch Deltopia deteriorate into a more and more intense event until we probably get something like the riots again, and we just accept that cyclical nature, and we also accept probably increased cost in policing. And even if the cost in policing is almost equivalent to the cost in entertainment, I'd really rather spend that money on entertainment. I think that's, as a Parks and Rec person, that's kind of more what I'd rather see the money spent on.
The second thing is, there's no one in this room at all who can say for sure that there will not be people who want to come into Isla Vista who are from out of town specifically for the Lucidity event. We can do we could do roadblocks. We could go full militaristic, and you would not necessarily prevent people from getting in. I think the ticketing idea is really good, free ticketing, but if this is a kind of person who is going to come into Isla Vista to go to a very chill music festival in Isla Vista, and specifically volunteering to come to like a well-regulated space with like guardians all over, like that feels like a win to me. And even if the person came to chug plastic handle vodka and can't get into a party, so they end up going to the Lucidity event, which is far more regulated than anything you're going to find on 6-7 DP, that still feels like a win to me. So, there's this weird reality where maybe this event ends up being like all out of towners, but if they're like, oh, instead of, they go back to University of Arizona or whatever, and they don't say, oh, I like raged my face off on like the beach or whatever. They say, I went to this like very cool, mellow music festival. Like that very quickly changes the entire perception around the state of what this event is. And there is definitely a risk, but I think there's like a very realistic chance that this goes pretty well.
Yeah, Carlos, you kind of hit on a couple of things that I was going to mention. Like I've been hearing the term outsiders a lot used as somewhat of a blanket statement. And I think that whoever is coming in is going to be, kind of directly reflecting whatever they're coming to. So right now, Deltopia is framed as even just being drunk in the street is still fun, and people are just coming to get, whatever, do their thing on the street. Everyone knows what's going on with Deltopia right now. The kind of crowd that you see at like a Lucidity event or like similar events, I think you all are very representative of that crowd in terms of you all seem like very passionate about this, about your work, and like I see in your sweatshirt, says love straight there. So I think that's kind of the vibe that I associate with Lucidity. Even someone who's not very familiar with the event, just in the past in my life. But I will say that that's an event that a lot of people will choose to go to sober, and you'll see a lot of people that choose to go to that event just for the culture of that event. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about kind of cultures similar to Lucidity, like rave culture, for example. I think there's a lot of preconceptions for around that kind of culture for people that have never been to that type of event before. But I know a lot of people who go to those events specifically for the people, specifically for the culture, and for that plur culture, peace, love, unity, respect culture, and don't even choose to partake in drugs, alcohol, etc. A lot of people choose to go to these types of events sober, and I think that's kind of the crowd that you're going to be drawing in. They're going to be the ones who say like, I heard that maybe Lucidity is doing something. Anyone who's that interested in that sort of thing, they're going to be someone that I'd probably want to strike up a conversation with. So, yeah, just wanted to put that out.
What's your name?
I'm Whitner.
Whitner, yeah, I couldn't have said it better, honestly, because we didn't start off with that culture. The event that was there before was another festival, which actually was asked to leave after 3 years. So, being a new festival, we didn't start off with people coming there understanding what we were about. And that's a very, very good point, is that even if they did know it was Lucidity, which we're not out to promote, the people that would be attracted to that is the people that we have cultivated over the years. That's what we've done over the years, and I'm proud to see it. We've cultivated a group of people that come back to us every year that are not into violence, that are not into getting totally screwed up. So I thank you for that, because that's insightful.
I feel similar. I feel a lot of resonance with what you said, is that I feel like the term
outsider has been used as this very negative term, like we don't want anyone on the outside. And, you know, there's, from what I'm hearing is, you know, upwards to tens of thousands of dollars being spent on advertisement to don't come here, don't come here, don't come here, don't come here, don't come here. But what happens if you have people coming here and we're creating a space that feels good, and then you have more representation of people who want to be in this space who feel good, and they're starting to become the higher percentage of participants. And so then they're the ones who are being able to share like-mindedness with others, instead of just, we're going to allow the party to happen and that's going to be the dominant percentage of people that are there. The dominant percentage is going to be the people who just want to party, want to party, want to party, want to party. The shift happens when the perspective changes on what we are presenting and what we're offering and who is coming to it. And I don't think the outsiders is a bad thing if you're getting the good representation of those people coming in saying, hey, I really liked coming to Isla Vista. I really liked coming to the university. So like, I'm a third generation, I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, and I'm a third generation to graduate from Santa Barbara High School. So I've heard everything about Isla Vista, and I've gotten to experience it from being born here. And so this is a representation on the city and on the school and on everything that's happening. So we're wanting to really be able to cultivate within ourselves, what do we want it to look like? And when people come back and talk about our school and what we're doing, and then our city and what we're doing, and our home and our children are being able to look at this in a way that they look at it in a positive light.
We have a lot of people that don't come to Lucidity because of our culture.
I'd seen a hand up over here.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your current ideas for how to work with local businesses, particularly around the parks that this might be at?
Yeah, I know that we've specifically talked about not having outside food vendors come in, and you know, use our businesses that are here and encircling the loop in the area where we're looking at programming. I know that, or I've heard from business owners here and from my experience in general that when, you know, they're excited when these large events are happening. Halloween just happened, Deltopia, they bring in a lot of, whether they're coming from the outside or whether they're just all here amped up celebrating, there's a lot of people that you know, need that self-care, they need to eat, and so it's easier when you're partying to buy it instead of make it, and businesses want to support that. Yeah.
And we talked about asking them to make specials for the day. So to think in their mind, if you have a group of 10 coming in, how can you quickly provide for that group of 10 or 15 or 20 and simplify your menu and get the food out fast and get it out fast and make more revenue fast. So it's about presenting to all of the food and beverages and all the different merchants out there. Think about getting the line in and out, in and out, in and out.
And water stations, water stations, water stations.
Yeah.
Lots of water stations.
Keep raising my hand, sorry.
No worries.
But and then I guess like with this, how will it be decided like if you guys move forward? Is there gonna be like a vote, or is this just happening no matter what?
Yeah, so there'll be a vote at our board meeting, which is happening to approve the contract. You know, I think what's going to be really important to move forward again is community buy-in, and so that's part of the process of why we're having this today.
But the vote is just like within the board, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You can come and yell at them.
Huh?
I said you can come and yell at them if you don't.
I mean, I can't really, but.
It's a public meeting.
Sue?
Yeah, you can yell at us too.
Would there still be some things in place like the beach closures and also the fencing that's along Camino Mallorca and the
I see Supervisor
closing off
Hartman
Del
shaking
Plata.
her head yes.
Those
Because
things
those are
still-
both county things, is my understanding, although the fencing might be university.
IVCSD pays for it, but it's part of county roadways. They do it out by the vernal pools in Mallorca. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in year one, again, it's experimental, so I think a lot of the things, the way it has been in the past from a response perspective.
Well, the beach thing is really, that's why the whole thing went up on Del Plata, because the beach was so, you know, polluted and overrun and mistreated and environmental impact, everything. So we just don't want to lose that protection.
Great point. Okay, I don't know if there's any other feedback or any other prompts that you want the community to give feedback.
Yeah,
Oh, all right.
I was really pleased to hear Lucidity say, well, if necessary, we'll downplay our name once. Then I also heard the name tends to attract the mellow side of concert goers.
Responsible people.
Well, we're not here to promote ourselves. You know, we didn't come and make this proposal.
I was trying to recognize that.
Yeah.
So that was very encouraging. So is there a way to, for people who don't know, Lucidity is a low impact love situation, to make that clear to outsiders? Like if I was outside, I wouldn't know that it wasn't.
Marketing guy.
Well, you know, it's a challenging conversation, because on the one hand we're hearing okay, Nikki has an answer.
I think there's lots of answers. I think, inevitably some people are going to hear that somehow Lucidity is involved. But I think moving forward, if we were to move forward with this collaboration, there would definitely have to be some mindfulness around how do we present this event to the public? How do we strike that chord where we don't want to attract a lot of outsiders, but inevitably we're going to have outsiders. And so how are we going to how are we going to attract the people that we want to attract, right, of the outsiders, while honoring all the other things that we want this celebration to be about, whether it's somebody who's hosting a party on Del Playa and who really wants to host his or her party, and that people who live in that household or have their plans. And I think what it comes down to, rather than worrying about how is the name going to be presented, how are we going to call it, I think what it comes down to, and for me whenever I do an event with Lucidity, is what is the intention? What are we really intending to do with this? And when we get clear on that, then the words become clear on what to name it. How is it Deltopia? Is it a riff on Deltopia? Is it, something that's different? Or Dualtopia, or something silly. There's so many possibilities, but at this point, it's more about what is the intention. And I think it was stated clearly at the beginning by both Jonah and Spencer and other people in the room, of creating a safe environment, and safe for the people who are coming from out of town, safe from the person who doesn't want to have their windows broken through, safety is a lot of different things, and people are going to experience this day or weekend from different perspectives. And so just coming back to that intention of safety, of love, of welcoming, and it's amazing what just holding that as your intention and energy, how that can shift what people are coming to. My first year at Lucidity, I was organizing the Healing Sanctuary, which had spaces with yoga and sound healing, and it was super mellow, and it was the earlier years of Lucidity, which were wilder. And I just remember some kind of, guys ready to party, and they would just come up and be like, ooh, what's that? And it, literally, they changed their body language just walking into the space, because the intention of the space was to be welcoming and loving and help people feel good. And that's what that person felt, and that's what they went towards as they kept walking into that space. So just in terms of the name, the marketing, of the colors we choose for the stage and all those things, that intention of safety and I think is part of the answer.
Yeah, and I think that we would dive deeper into that question of what are the values around which we want to produce an event together in a multi-stakeholder sort of deep dive in a similar format to this, but rather than, you know, a board of seats up here and an audience, it would be in a circle and we would have a whiteboard and we would sort of exhaustively explore the values that we want this event to be founded on, and we would allow the messaging to emerge from that multi-stakeholder process. So that's part of the plan, is really to do a deep community exploration on what do we want this to look like 2, 4, 5 years into the future, and for this first one, but really set the intention strongly with as many voices as possible.
And to piggyback, I think coming at it from that format of connecting with residents, students, houses on Del Playa, student organizations, all of those representations, then we're not having to market it or put it out there in all these ways, because everybody right here locally is hearing about it, hearing how they can get involved, and especially the houses that are going to be partying. That's part of our outreach also, is reaching out to them, seeing how they'd like to get involved, if there's a certain game or activity that they would like to host, and you know, then that's enlisting them and their housemates or the party that they're bringing to come over and be involved at least a little bit in what we're doing, even if they just go back and party afterwards. So I think it'll be helpful.
Okay, I don't know if there's any other feedback or anything else specific, but I want to just thank everyone so much for coming and for providing input. Like I mentioned, we're going to be having a board meeting on November 12th, did I get that date right? To consider the contract with Lucidity, which is when there'll be a final decision. We encourage everyone to come out and provide us with more input and continue to stay engaged in the process, because I really want to hand it to Lucidity. They have come in here, we approached them, and they came in very selflessly and have sort of worked with us every step of the way to say, we want to make sure that this event is your event and not our event. And so that is just really encouraging, and it's exactly the type of thing that I think can really, you know, over time transform Deltopia into something that preserves all the best parts of what exists now and gets rid of the bad parts. So thank you for that. I think they'll be here afterwards and can continue taking questions, but with that, I think we have a wrap that. Go ahead.
So on our agenda, we do have a provision for us to, as boards, provide direction to staff on where we want to go from here. So I do think it'll be good if we take a moment to exchange on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to direct, do you have something written down?
I mean, I'm most interested in hearing from everyone else on where their position is now after having this public dialogue and hearing this awesome presentation. I mean, as far as where I'm at this point, I've kind of gone through a few iterations of reviewing your proposals, and this is something that many of us in this room have been speaking about for 5 years, some of us even longer. And with that in mind, like, this is a radical thing to do, and this is something new, but it hasn't been without people asking for it. And it hasn't been without intention, and it hasn't been without thoughtful deliberation. So I'm really encouraged by that. I think that right now, in this current format, it's sad what Deltopia is. There are lots of people who have fun, and that's awesome, but there's also lots of people who don't like to see so many fences up. There's lots of people who don't like to see so many police officers having to be there. Not that it's that people don't like police officers, but just the amount of police officers who need to be there because it hasn't been a safe event. There's people who are not happy with just having the community at certain times be destroyed with garbage and people just not being good stewards of the land. And I really see this as a turning point and an opportunity for us to do something different. I think with all of us who are elected to represent Isla Vista, we can't keep doing the same thing because it's not working. We have made things better incrementally, but we still have a long way to go with this event. So I see this as a great way to create something beautiful, create something that we can be proud of, for us to promote public safety, support local business, and most importantly, invest in community building through this process. I see this as a great trial. I see a trial run for doing that. I see this as a great opportunity for us to go with a trusted company based in our community that wants to work with us. And at this point, I couldn't be more excited for this.
Thank you. Cool. Any other feedback from our board members here? Either board is welcome.
I would love to see this happen. I think it's so beneficial for the community, but the only thing is I'm really hoping that we get cooperation with the budget, with other orgs helping us fund this, just because it's something that would help everyone, and I think that budgeting is super important. It's one of the main things that we should be doing too.
If anyone has $100.
Go for me. Go for me, yeah.
You might say your name out loud for those that don't know that you're a
I'm Christy.
board member.
My name is Christy.
But other people might know.
Okay, any other comments from our electeds? Cool. So with that, maybe just a simple motion to direct our staffs to bring us back something? Or do you have something?
So I would certainly like to entertain that motion. I'm also curious, just with the park board here and hearing this, I'm curious to hear if there would be any interest in contributing funds to this event in some amount. I mean, obviously there's a large budget, there's many different parts to the budget, and the community services district would be interested in picking up as much of it as we can, but just curious what the park district could see contributing.
Put on the spot.
And in all
From a
honesty,
former park
I'd love
district
to,
director.
I mean, we have Matt over there also who's on the board, and Mrs.
Yeah.
Whitner and Carlos and myself. Sarah's not here right now. For me, this hasn't been a major priority with all the things that we need to do. I can see putting in a little, but I can't see putting in a lot. That's me personally, because we have infrastructure needs, we have safety needs, we have a lot of moving parts right now in the district. So, but I tend to be the conservative one in the group now. So you can ask.
Can I make a quick comment also?
Sure.
I mean, part of what we enjoy doing and one of our values is communal reciprocity. So we enjoy hearing what needs there are in places that we're involved. And so maybe there's something, well, we've got lots of hands and things that we can help happen. So maybe that's something that
I think it was already mentioned, I think, for the short term while the event's happening, just like contributing hours to Adopt a Block the next morning would be really good. It's a volunteer program that we run that cleans up the streets after Deltopia and on every weekend. We were talking a little bit more like putting pipes in the ground.
but we have people that are skilled in all ways. So these are the things that we like to hear about.
Well,
and we might not be able to do everything that you're.
we're trying to get recycled water in our parks right now.
All right.
Not something you guys can help us with. I wish you could, but.
Sure. But I'd love to reach out to you all and see if there's anything
Yeah.
we could cooperate on.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, maybe we just entertain a motion to direct our staffs to work together and bring us back this proposal. There's a number of pieces, but if we just keep it broad, I think it's a good sort of bow on top, if you will.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay. Motion. Yeah. Is there a second from the CSD board? Some more? We've got other board members in the back who are staying quiet, but we appreciate you representing the county and representing ECSB. Okay, motion made and seconded. Any public comment?
What does that mean? What's happening?
Oh, we're just, so the motion, Jonathan, can you read it back? I think it's to direct staff to bring us back the proposal at our November 12th meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, what's happening?
Sorry, it's weird. Government
I
structure
was like,
is
motion to
weird.
direct the staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and one thing that George brought up at our last meeting, which I think is really important, is for us to also speak to Santa Barbara City College about perhaps contributing some funds to this event, whether that's Santa Barbara City College administration or the foundation. Definitely appreciate anything that IVRPD considers. I would like to make the ask of exploring something in the $20,000 range. Like to respectfully make that ask, but that's just kind of what I see in my mind as one director, not on behalf of the district.
And may I comment, from our agenda, we have nothing on it to even discuss that type of
Right.
thing. That's very
Okay,
clear,
so we'll
Brown
be-
Act and everything else, guys. Our November agenda, since our interim GM is not gonna be here, is tiny and simple, cause we're way down on staff, like way down on staff. So I could see possibly bringing this up, unless it's our
probably a
chair.
major thing in
but
December, maybe we're trying to keep
December.
streamlined as
And that's
possible.
okay. I think it'll be an ongoing thing. I have meetings set up with the president of the board of Santa Barbara City College and the Santa Barbara City College staff member soon. We have meetings with UC Santa Barbara, as well as continued communication with the county and the city of Goleta as well. Okay, so with that, CSB board, we want to vote on this motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes 5-0 with 2 absences. Excellent. Okay, now we've done our administrative stuff. I don't know if you guys have to do administrative stuff.
Did you have to move to adjourn?
Yeah, all I gotta do is everything you guys wanted to do?
Yeah, I think so, unless there's anything else that anyone wants to.
Oh, Matt, did you have some?
Alright, well then I move to adjourn the IVRPD. That's all we gotta do.
Simple, simple.
Thank you.
We keep it simple.
Thank you.
And we just, I think
Technically, it's just technically called into order.
motion to adjourn.
Yeah, no, we called it in order.
Seconded, I
Wow.
think.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
I don't know if you
Alrighty.
Yeah,
We're
you
just,
got
I'm
it.
gonna call the meeting to order.
I'd be
excited to see that.
See what happens.
Really cool. Well, this joint meeting is like the loose form.
Yeah, that culture just happened, so.
I really do.
We really want to.
I've seen it all.
You know, if you came here to do that, to fuck up like that, we don't want you, we don't go.
tried to stop
Don't
the riot.
come back next year, you know? And we've lost a lot of people that way. You know, there's a lot of people that, we're the goody two shoes of the festival world.
Hey Ron, I'm gonna get on the road. Dan.
Yeah, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna give you my card, and like I said, I've been at Island Vista for quite some time now. Yeah, yeah. Happy. It was